Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Let me just keep playing with this mic. That's all I've been doing for the last 10 minutes is trying to adjust the stupid mic again. Never works the way I want it to work. Don't know why. I've been changing all the angles, but that's okay. I'm not really complaining. Let's see how folks are doing in the chat. Give me 1 second here. Give me 1 second. I just wanted to do one more thing before I joined you all for maybe the best show we've ever had. We got to remind you. There's so much going on. We got to do it, right? We got to do it. We got to do it. Oh, that's what I was doing, was getting up the chat so I could chat with y'all. Let's see what's going on in the chat. I saw the chat was lively. Good morning, block 938,125, 63,000 US trash tokens. It was 62 the last I looked. There you go for one Bitcoin. John C919, good morning, y'all. Hassan, good morning. Citadel Daniel in the house. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning, gang, from T-Dog. Yo, yo, yo. Chef Zero says, blessing Bampians, priceless gift, a new day, a golden age in a digital domain. The golden age is coming to the physical domain. We're talking about that today. Thank you for the hype, Chef Zero. Lee J369, good morning, Count and crew. Racist bird gets the worm, says T-Dog. Yo, yo, yo. Good morning, Bitcoin brethren. Indeed, 72 Jet Lance 2002. It is a great day to be alive. He's got a Bitcoin emoji. He's got a USA emoji, and he's got a Donald Trump emoji. There you go, Chef Zero, with several Rumble emojis with hearts. We love them. I am loving this generational sats sale, says Hassan. Many are indeed. We're talking all about my prediction and my analysis that the market was completely and is completely manipulated today. We've got more proof about market manipulation. It's a big part of the show. There you go. Yo, Chatelet, escape the matrix indeed. Good morning, team. I feel ya, JJ. 3, 2, 1, count BTC, showtime. Morning, gang. Rant? Nope. No, Citadel Daniel, not today. Who can complain? No one complains about tech. Tech rant, State of the Union tonight. Indeed, it's a mellower account these days. Yeah, he needs coffee. Mellow gang. The Countessa and the princesses are taming the wild beast. Indeed, one day you wake up and you're old. Won't, won't. That's true. That is true. I've noticed that phenomena. That's how it goes. What are folks in the YouTube chat saying? Indeed, get the shower ready. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. The deep stank. Pass the beef jerky. Ay, 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 ay. Good stuff, Deep Sank. We love it. We love it. There you go, everyone. All right. So indeed, as we've heard, we've got operational sunrise technology here. We're doing great on the sun, and Bitcoin is running. You can get a Bitcoin for 63,000 US trash tokens. Zero beef jerky markets created with Bitcoin. That's the good news. Beef jerky will not buy you Bitcoin unless you're actually selling beef jerky in a gas station or a farmer's market or something like that. If you sell enough, maybe you'll get there to buy a full Bitcoin, but not the Rothschild kind of beef jerky. We're talking about that today. That won't get you a Bitcoin. There you go. Let's talk about all the things that are new. As you know, we like to start off with a bit of fake news just to get us going, right? Let's see what's going on for the NPCs. Let's hear what they're hearing about. What is in the news for the NPC mind today, right? We need to understand the NPC mind. And the only way to do it is to look at what they're being prompted with, to look at their predictive programming. This one here is funny if you're... Oh, no, that's not what I want. 1 second. Wrong. Funny, I suppose, if you're not in Canada. First reading, overwhelmed by asylum claims. Ottawa coped by ignoring security protocols. 25,000 people from some of the most dangerous countries on earth received refugee status without ever meeting a government employee. Very good headline. We got more. This from The Guardian, guys. This from The Guardian. Tinderbox UK may be one shock away from food riot, experts say. Weakened food security could tip into unrest after a cyber attack, extreme weather, or conflict, analyst finds. How are things going out there in the UK? One shock away from a food riot. Here's what we got, the latest from Euronews. This is amazing news, guys. Researchers have created a new mathematical solution to analyze how emission-intensive actors are responsible for increasing climate damage. A groundbreaking study, I bet you it's groundbreaking, has lifted the lid on just how much human-made climate change is impacting extreme weather across Europe. Climate researcher Gottfried Kirchengast and his team at the University of Graz in Austria have developed a new method for computing the hazards from extreme events such as heat waves, floods, and droughts, ushering a new mathematical solution. The model can be used to compute the frequency, duration, intensity, spatial extent, and other variables of extreme events. This allows researchers to analyze the extent to which emission-intensive actors such as states or companies are responsible for increasing climate damages and risks. If suitable long-term climate data are available, the development of climate hazard metrics for extremes of interest can be tracked year by year and decade by decade in European countries and on any region worldwide. How climate change is baking Europe. Researchers use the new method to investigate changes in extreme heat events in Austria and across Europe using data sets of daily maximum temperatures from 1961 to 2024. The threshold for extreme was taken as the temperature at each location exceeded the daily values in the period from 1960 to 1990 by 1%. For Austria, this was 30 degrees Celsius. In southern Spain, it was over 35, and in Finland, around 25. So there you go, guys. They have a new mathematical formula, everyone, using a new mathematical solution. It can be used to compute the frequency, duration, intensity, spatial extent, and other variables. It can be computed, guys. They know now how to predict with this new mathematical solution how your car exhaust is creating hurricanes across the world. They figured it out with math. This is also what we know. The Baltic Sea, guys, is showing no sign of quality improvement despite decades of conservation efforts. The Baltic Sea has been under excruciating pressure for decades as human activities have transformed it into one of the world's largest dead zones. My screen seems... I gotta get rid of these. Guys, 1 second. I gotta get rid of all these fake news stories. They take up a lot of action here, right? Okay, I'll get rid of that one in a second. Everyone here from Milwaukee, record high Milwaukee temperatures highlight climate change's impact on fall spring. So all the Wisconsin people out there, let me know how your false spring is going so far. A record high temperature on February 16th give Milwaukeeans a taste of false spring. Oh no, guys, climate change has given you false spring. False spring is here, everyone. Let's see what the chat is saying about that from Milwaukee. I need to know how that's going. How's the false spring going in Milwaukee? No comments. Let me hear what your thoughts are on your Milwaukee temperatures. Good morning, Bitcoiners. No human jerky for me, thanks. We don't want human jerky. So there you go, Wisconsin people, your false prophets, your false spring. There it is. Uh-oh, I got this bad news too. This is from the Center for Health Journalism. Bekisia. Here's what we know. Climate change, superbugs plus climate change equals double trouble. Here's why. Superbugs are a big health issue. So the climate change. So is climate change. Put two together and the problem becomes bigger. Guys, let's just mash the superbugs with the climate change, and you've got a superbug equals super climate change equals double trouble story. Superbugs are germs that cause infections that are almost impossible to cure. Uh-oh. This is called antimicrobial resistance. In South Africa, drug-resistant tuberculosis is the clearest example. But increasingly, many types of ear, chest, and sexually transmitted infections are becoming hard to treat. Uh-oh. Because the earth is becoming hotter, we're seeing more floods and droughts. Flooding can make superbugs spread faster and further, and heat helps germs adapt faster. We're in big trouble with the superbugs, guys. Superbugs coming with the supercharged global warming. And just when you thought global warming couldn't get any worse, this is what we know. We're going to lose the Tour de France. Global warming raises heat risk for major cycling race. The Tour de France has come within fractions of a degree of breaching high-risk limits in recent years. Oh, no. No more cycling around France in the summer. What are we going to do? Global warming everywhere. Wisconsin has no representative in the Great Awakening. Step your game up. Don't you? Aren't there a million Wisconsinites around? I thought there were all kinds of Wisconsin people around. All right, I got some good ones on Trump today. There's some really good news on Trump stuff. It's real fun. Here's what we got. Financial Times. Donald Trump's state of mind is a global risk. The cabinet of psychopaths make an already erratic U.S. president. Oh, sorry. A cabinet of sycophants makes an already erratic president a greater threat. Edward Luce. U.S. psychiatrists have been discouraged for commenting on the mental health of public figures since the so-called Goldwater rule in the 1970s. To the uncredentialed, however, the American president's hold on reality seems to be erratic. The dwindling universe of respectable Donald Trump apologists attribute his daily flights of fancy to trolling. He is just winding liberals up, they say. That Pavlovian excuse is wearing thin as Trump readies a U.S. armada for a Middle Eastern war whose aims he cannot articulate. An honest reckoning of geopolitical risks would place his wayward psychology high up. Oh, we got some good mind reading stuff here. Let's see what they're saying. Trump, however, is encountering a growing number of roadblocks as more U.S. institutions push back. Here, where do we go? Where's all the craziness? For all the talk of Trump as a madman, my colleagues taco rule Trump always chickens out, generally holds. He can reasonably described as a bully and a narcissist, but he backs off when he is outgunned. Taco only works, however, when Trump shows what is at risk, whether foreign or American. People who tell him what he wants to hear, not what he needs to know, are playing a dangerous game. The road to Trumpian recklessness is paved with flattery, from the Financial Times. Very good. This one's also good too. CNN Sports, why U.S. men's hockey team is under fire after call with Trump. They're under fire, guys. The U.S. men's hockey team. They thought they'd be enjoying their time as gold medalists. It turns out CNN and others are complaining, and now they're under fire. They thought this was going to be fun. The U.S. Olympic men's hockey team is facing backlash. Oh, my God. I wonder how much they're crying about the backlash. The backlash. Oh no, it can't be going great. Oh no for the hockey team. This is also great too. Most Americans say Trump is growing erratic with age. That's what everyone's saying. Everybody, according to Reuters. Very good stuff. Oh, this is from the Atlantic too. So here's the logo, or the picture that came with the story. The GOP, I'll read you the notes on the picture just because it's interest, right? So The Atlantic writes, since the start of Donald Trump's second term, Republicans have deployed even more Nazi imagery and rhetoric and espoused ideas associated with the Nazi Party. Radio Free Tom argues he examines how this dark fringe reached the center of the GOP. The Republican Party has a Nazi problem. Edward says, worth pointing out that they couldn't find actual Nazi imagery used by the GOP to run as cover art for Tom's story, so they apparently had to make some that would sufficiently shock the Atlantic readership. That's a fake picture. Real story, guys. Absolute real story. There you go. And finally, this one's great. We get this from the New York Times, everyone. The New York Times wrote yesterday, the Epstein files should never have been released. No, never. So those are our NPC news stories for the day. I hope you enjoyed them. Let me have a sip of coffee, and then we'll keep talking about what's going on. Indeed. So now what's funny about this Epstein story in the New York Times is that it's who wrote it, right? So people commenting on who wrote it. So first of all, Grimaldus writes, the New York Times just published an article titled The Epstein Files Should Never Have Been Released. And he says, you're never going to guess who the author is. So who's the author exactly? I will show you. The author is this fella here. His name is Daniel Rickman. Do we remember who Daniel Rickman is? Epstein Comey leaker. He is Comey's friend who we use to leak all of these stories. So indeed, Daniel Rickman, the man Comey trusted to leak his memos, daughter of ex-FBI Director Comey, is prosecutor in Epstein case report. So we see here the January 6th and Epstein files starting to merge, starting to blend together, which is what I said from the moment the 2020 election came down was going to be the case. I didn't know that I knew that the Russia story had to be front and center as we move into change in America. I did not know it was going to coincide entirely with the Epstein files. We've seen this for quite some time now, though. So since I originally singled out the Russia story and its implications on moving forward as a country, as a people, as an economy, as a system, we had to get to the bottom of exactly what architecture went into Russia, because it was always the most devilish and fiendish thing going on in Trump's first term. Now, the Epstein files also dovetail with it. So there's plenty of features of the Epstein files that look a lot like Russia. And so it's important to overlap these stories and see how they start twisting and coming in together. So indeed, here we see the connection with Comey and Richmond, and that's one of the bigger stories. Now go back and we remember exactly what happened with Russia, because just like Epstein, it's a very tough story to follow. There's so many ins and outs. But indeed, here we see Devin Nunes on that fateful day. Here he is in March. I'll play the audio here so that we can all hear it because it's a relevant interview. So this is back in 2017, I think. April 17th, 2017.
Did President Obama order any kind of surveillance of the president?
Well, we don't know who sent the taskings. If the taskings were changed into what went into these intelligence reports, but we're going to try to find that out.
Permission to put out this information today. Did the Justice Department give you the okay to talk about this?
Justice Department doesn't have anything to do with this. This is information that was brought to me that I thought the president needed to know about incidental collection, where the president himself and others in the Trump transition team were clearly put into intelligence reports that ended up at this White House and across a whole bunch of other agencies. And I thought it was important for the president to know this. That's why I briefed the speaker this morning, and I came down here as soon as I could.
How many people are you seeing in these reports, and do any of them currently work at the White House for Mr. Trump?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into the specifics of it because look, I was only able to see a few dozen, of which I think a lot of it does have foreign intelligence value. So let's not. There were dozens of reports that I was able to see that we're hoping that the NSA, FBI, CIA will provide, because I know they exist, so I want them to provide them to our committee so that all the members have an opportunity to see what I've been shown.
Mr. Simmons, what did the president tell you after you briefed him about this?
I think the president is concerned, and he should be. I think he'd like to see these reports, and I'd hopefully.
And indeed, here we see, that's right, when I put it to Devin Nunes on my show, Sunday Futures, repeatedly to tell the truth about all of it. And we have yet to see any accountability for the liars who criminally took our country down these ridiculous rabbit holes for a decade. Indeed, here you can see going forward this Tulsi Gabbard video. Trump shared this today. It shows you the ins and outs of exactly what happened. I'll play the audio I'll play this video too. I think it will play without any interference on my end, but I'm not positive.
In our country, directly leading at the helm, President Obama.
Let me know if the
and his
audio
senior-most national security cabinet, James Comey, John Brennan, James Clapper, and Susan Rice, and others, essentially making a very intentional decision to create this manufactured, politicized piece of intelligence with the objective of subverting the will of the American people, who in November of 2016 delivered a historic victory to President Trump, defeating Hillary Clinton. And President Obama and his team, their goal was to essentially not accept the decision of the American people and to use this manufactured, politicized intelligence as a means to enact what would become essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. You have gone into great detail over these years of what the effects of this document and this decision have resulted in. Obviously, a years-long Mueller investigation that cost taxpayers almost $40 million, 2 congressional impeachments, endless smears and attacks against not only President Trump, but his family. He had senior members of his team who were investigated, some arrested and jailed. We had heightened and increased tensions between the United States and Russia. The list goes on and on about the consequences of President Obama and his senior cabinet members politicizing intelligence once again, and I say these words very clearly, to enact what was essentially a years-long coup, subverting the will of the American people in that election in November. Now, you referenced this President's Daily Brief document that was drafted for President Obama in early December that reaffirmed what the intelligence community professionals, as you say, had been assessing for the previous 6 months leading up to the election, which was that Russia neither had the intent nor capability to essentially hack the outcome of the U.S. election. As you said, President Obama's political appointees pulled that document before it could be published, and it has not been published until we released it today. And the very next day after they pulled that document, President Obama called a National Security Council cabinet meeting to discuss how Russia interfered with the election. Again, this is the first week of December.
9th,
President
right?
Trump had already won. Correct.
This is the December 9th meeting.
That's exactly right. The December 9th meeting, we declassified and released what they call the summary of conclusions from that meeting. Then DNI James Clapper took the lead on what President Obama wanted done, and which was essentially create a document that tells us not if, but how Russia interfered with the election. President Obama delivered the conclusion that he wanted the intelligence community to reach and directed them to find and essentially create and manufacture the intelligence to support the conclusion that President Obama wanted to deliver to the American people. Once that document was drafted, the deep state kicked into gear and did what they usually do. They started leaking this classified information out to their friends at the Washington Post and others who are working hand in glove with the deep state to lay the groundwork for the assessment that they eventually released that served as the basis, once again, for this years-long coup with the goal of trying to subvert the American people's will and usurp President Trump from being able to deliver on the mandate that the American people gave to him when they chose to elect him as President of the United States.
So there you go. The part I wanted you to hear, and the reason I chose the clip, not just because Trump shared it yesterday, is because she does talk about how the deep state uses these leakers, uses that architecture, that sort of cheat code within the architecture of deceit to help subvert the president's will and the president's agenda. And we've seen it for a long time, and it went back to Russia. And now, even today, when I see, folks in the chat saying very clearly the list goes on, yet not the actual criminal charges and accountability, that from Chef Zero. Now, I get why people want the timeline to be sped up and they want people thrown in jail right away. But remember, this is a system and there's architecture to the system. When we talk about the Epstein files and Russia, the thing that comes out to me is that it's infrastructure. Just like Bitcoin is infrastructure, these are more than just opinions. These are more than just actions. Leaking itself can be seen as an action, but that you have this professor, and then he goes to the New York Times, and then everything seemed to come in and out of this architecture. And it's that this architecture has the capacity to project its point of view, and that it uses these leakers as well in order to maintain its veneer of credibility. Because if you look too closely, it's very obviously corrupt, and the architecture of deceit starts to become very obvious. When they say that the veil has been lifted, that's kind of what it means. The leakage and having leakers allows you to keep this veil, because everyone gets to pretend they're still in their positions and they're still respectable. But the big thing here is that leakers, of course, were used to help manufacture this story and help churn it out and help the media do it. And that's why when you see Trump here now, we're talking about architecture, right? So when Trump and that Board of Peace that I was mentioning last week, when Trump convened the Board of Peace, he said something really important, because it looks like the deep state has been using these leakers for a long time, and that the architecture of deceit is sort of bound to this. So I'll play Trump's comment here, and it's important, and this is something that Susan Kokinda pointed out in her episode recently, talking here about Witkoff. Now, I've had the good fortune of meeting Steve Witkoff a couple of times. Very interesting fella. And here you see Trump talking about Witkoff as if he's the Henry Kissinger of his era, but not the kind of Kissinger that leaked, and it turned out that Kissinger was a big leaker. We saw many times in the Nixon tapes, Nixon wondering aloud to Kissinger, and Nixon kind of a babe in the woods when it comes to Kissinger, because when all the walls had closed in on Kissinger, or on Nixon, you can hear him in the Nixon tape saying, it's just you and I, Henry. It's just you and I. And it never was just him and Henry. Henry was scamming him the whole time. So here's Trump talking about Witkoff and the Board of Peace, and why this is infrastructure to replace the old infrastructure. You can't just move against. I understand Tommy DOU saying, and when time runs out with no accountability, yeah, that'll be a problem. But we're not there yet. It's a race against the clock. And it's all about re-establishing new architecture above the old architecture. And then I believe you will get your space drops. There is a season of accountability coming to America. And the season of accountability has to have this type of infrastructure. You've got to get rid of the leakers. You have to have stuff like Board of Peace in place, because as we continue to go down the kayfabe route, we're headed to 9/11 next, guys. And that's why the 9/11 files have been suppressed from the Epstein releases. They'll be coming soon. And you're going to start to see more and more governments and institutions caught up in this. It's not just what's happening in the UK, but the UK piece is important because that is the fountainhead of a lot of this architecture of deceit. So here you can hear Trump talking about leakers and how important it is that there are no leakers this time around.
And I said, Steve, how would you like to be Henry Kissinger Jr. that doesn't leak? And he said, are you a leaker, Steve? No. He didn't even know what the word meant, and it's true. I always say Henry Kissinger, who was one of the great leakers of all time, by the way, Richard Nixon said to him, Henry, who's leaking all this stuff? I don't know, Mr. President. It was Henry. It was like, These are little stories I like telling you. But Steve has been unbelievable. Everybody likes him.
So the architecture of deceit relied on these leakers, and they relied on this facet. So when Trump comes out and puts Witkoff in, he's building architecture that can be used, because if you just burn the whole thing down and don't have an escape route, you're going to end up like the fella in South Korea. You got to have an escape plan. It's not so difficult, I don't think, right now to burn this thing down. You have all of these Epstein files, people willing to burn the whole thing to the ground, I think, just to save themselves. I think you have the Obama cabal ready to burn things down just to avoid accountability. So we'll even talk about Mexico in a few minutes, how what's going on there might be a sign of this. Just letting it all burn because you don't want to face accountability. But accountability is coming, and we can see this architecture from what we've seen from the was the leaker in the first. It looks like he was Phil C411. Was Bannon the leaker in the first Trump admin? I'm again, we're dealing with wrestling. We're dealing with kayfabe. Don't take everyone at their word when it comes to people involved in these stories. People are playing different roles. Alex Jones, you can think of Alex Jones. I don't want to think in analogies, but I love to listen to Alex Jones content. And when Alex Jones, for example, gets mad these days about accountability, don't forget that Alex Jones in a kayfabe world is kind of like the manager of some not heavyweight champion wrestlers. He's out there promoting all kinds of hype around this fight and that fight and the peoples he's representing. And I don't mean this as an insult at all. I just think that Alex Jones is a big part of the architecture, not of deceit, but of getting through the architecture of deceit in an effective way. Again, you can't be. Alex Jones has been screaming the truth for 30-something years now, and it didn't really get through to people until they got drawn into this wrestling match, until they got drawn into Trump's kayfabe, into Trump theater. And now that they're in Trump theater, people are waking up to it all the time, and people can't avoid seeing it. People managed to avoid seeing Epstein files stuff for a long time, and there was no way to force them to see it until Trump tricked them into following the Get Trump rabbit hole, and that looks like it was a trap from the beginning. So, but we can already see that the architecture is being exposed. Here's the latest in the UK with Lord Mendelsohn being arrested. Majid Nawaz says, every single one of you will be exposed. We are coming. Majid goes on further here, talking about timing, and I think it's important to talk about timing. He says, April 10th, 2023, us, we are coming. Them, hopium, nothing ever happens. Us, every single one of them will be exposed. Them, okay, we got some names, but nothing more than that will happen. Us, this is a live operation to take down the criminal globalist cartel. Keep watching. Them, okay, a prince and a dark prince got arrested, but nothing else will happen. Black pillars suffer from the same denial of reality that plagues normies. Give credit where credit is due, else you come across a bunch of terminally online, overweight, whiny Redditors. Now, I don't think that's exactly the case, but again, there is a pattern here, and I think if you're gonna you got to do the Indiana Jones trick at the very beginning of the Raiders of the Lost Ark movie, when he's got the bag of sand and the gold thing, and you've got to swap one for the other. You need another architecture there in order to manage the fallout of showing people what's really going on, because it comes straight through in the Epstein files, just like we're going to see Russia, and what that suggested, what hidden force, what empire outside of Russia was there. And we're seeing it because it's in the Epstein files. Lord Mendelsohn and all these folks. Forget about all the craziness for a second, right? This is the most important part. The Rothschilds are pulling the strings in Europe. The chief legal counsel of Goldman was a regular contact with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein explained the inner workings of the Vatican Bank to Larry Summers, etc. There are still millions of unreleased files from DOJ, CIA, and State Department, which is why I believe you're going to continue to have this breadcrumbs. There's unlimited amount of declassification. There's unlimited amount of revelatory information that can be declassified from now until the midterms, for example. And remember what Trump did last summer. Trump completely destroyed the fake news legacy architecture of deceit business model when he stayed so far ahead of them. They're used to taking the summer off. If you remember last year, Trump went every single day, and I was a beneficiary of it. I do the show every single day, so it's very nice to be delivered constant, perpetual stories all summer long like we were last year. And I expect it to be even more this summer. So Trump is going to continue to lay the breadcrumbs down. You're going to continue to have calls for people to hang these people, drop them from space, whatever. And again, if you've heard about the plan before, the plan was always that Trump has to be above this. It has to be induced amongst the people, and you have to have them seeing that there is some form of system there that can hold these people accountable. So, but it has to be the will of the people. Now, just as we've seen here with all of this Rothschild stuff being one of the biggest names in the Epstein files, and where you really get a sense of the financial system. Remember, it doesn't look like Epstein was working for Mossad or CIA or MI6 or one bank or another bank or one country or another country. Nothing like that was going on. He was working for anybody involved in this architecture of deceit. Every single instance, the NGOs, the different nation states, the different governments, all of these folks that were running this globalist system, the system that was doing managed decline, as we heard from Marco Rubio 2 weeks ago when he was in Munich. These folks here have been managing this system for generations now, this divide and conquer system. And now, luckily, and this is an interesting story, I believe, you're going to see this stuff start to spill out into the open with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is starting to muscle its way into the center stage position. We're on the main stage with all this Epstein stuff and with all the stuff we see with this architecture of deceit and with what Trump is doing. But the main story, I believe, is going to be also about market manipulation. And we saw the first instances of the architecture of deceit as it relates to Bitcoin and all that we've experienced in the past few years. Because yesterday, the administrator winding down Do Kwon's Terraform Labs has sued Jane Street, alleging the trading giant engaged in insider trading to profit unlawfully from and ultimately hasten the crypto empire's collapse. Now, I'm going to do a little thing here where just remember this, and we're going to move forward, and then we're going to come back because it is important. So that's Caitlin Long putting the red light up. Lots of people saying zero hedge fucking finally. Jane Street was sued for alleged insider trading by the administrator winding up the affairs of Terraform Labs, the firm whose 40 billion US trash token collapse in 2022 roiled the crypto markets and contributed to the collapse of FTX. You'll never guess what the algos did at exactly 8 p.m. Eastern time. Here talking about more Bitcoin dumping last night, other nights, seeing the Bitcoin market continue to get manipulated. Here now, let's remember who Jane Street actually is, right? The criminal enterprise which spawned the likes of Sam Bankman-Fried and Caroline Ellison should be barred from ever trading again. And there it is. Jane Street was behind the 2022 crypto winter, destroying Terraform by first depegging the token and destroying the ecosystem, then pretending it would rescue Terra while effectively it was soaking up what little value remained. And so we see their hand here. Caitlin Long pointing out, Jane Street, please refer to Wall Street Journal's breaking story. Don't forget, Jane Street is where SBF started his career. New major investigation dropping February 26 on one of crypto's most profitable businesses where multiple employees abused internal data to insider trade over a prolonged period of time. Now, again, I've been talking about the strange connections between SBF and Jane Street and what's been going on. And Terra Luna, and I've mentioned it. It's ever since I've been paying close attention, as you know, to what goes on with the moon. Now, I'm not following the moon just because I love the moon. If you remember, the Terra Luna collapse happened during an eclipse. And the eclipse, the lunar eclipse, right? Terra lunar happened the night of an eclipse in 2022. And a few months later, there was another eclipse, and it happened to be on the midterms in 2022. And the next eclipse was the end of Sam Bankman-Fried and the other side of this trade, the Sam Bankman-Fried trade. And so the weird connection between these lunar eclipses that we had always made me take note that there's some other force at work here that we can't necessarily perceive. But we're starting to see more and more how this market manipulation worked, and many people talking about how it's affecting current markets. So the same institution, and now I said that was the day the bank man was fried, that basically they showed their hand, the architecture of deceit in the market would eventually come out. It is now coming out simultaneous to the Epstein files stuff coming out, simultaneous to understanding finally that folks like the Rothschilds exist, that market manipulators exist. Now, to go back to Jane Street and remember where Sam Bankman-Fried also comes from, and that's Arabella Advisors, which is George Soros's actual fund. Like, his parents actually legit just worked for George Soros on their primary fund, not some venture fund, not the thing that Scott Bessent was associated with. That's completely separate. That's other branches of the family, not the same as the family office and the actual George Soros money going into the system. That was Sam Bankman-Fried's family. Sam Bankman-Fried's mom and dad and Arabella Advisors are exactly where the beginnings of Sam Bankman-Fried's operation come from. Alameda Research. Now, I knew Alameda Research. I reached out to them in the earliest days. And again, you can see the connections. They're as obvious as the nose on my face. You could see Bill Barr, who's also came out and arrested our page, which created FTX. They needed to get BitMEX out of the way. And so Bill Barr, I always said that was a smoking gun, and that was Trump being subverted by his own leaky government, and his own government that wasn't really respecting him as the commander-in-chief and the elected representative of the government. They were doing what they felt like. Now we're seeing more and more that all of this insider trading and market abuse also affects what's going on in Bitcoin currently. So it's tied to that old story. So I know a lot of Bitcoiners have been feeling like this market down, this bear market was off because we're not quite center stage the way we were in 2022 when you had the bank crash. But I can see us on an express train into the center of this narrative as a leading character as we go forward. And that's why I believe you're going to get something like the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. Just as Trump announced last week in his Board of Peace that you had the strategic stockpile of rare earth minerals and materials, you're going to hear about the strategic stockpile of Bitcoin simply because it reestablishes control of the federal government in the hands of the Treasury Secretary, which is where we're headed. We're headed back to a Hamiltonian system. Hamilton, of course, was the Secretary of the Treasury. We're headed back to a productive system. And we can see already the banks using all of this architecture of deceit was able to get control of the Federal Reserve years ago and alter the American system and replace it with the beginnings of being caught up in this architecture. So here, the Bitcoin therapist says, so the same institution is being sued for insider trading that caused the collapse of Terra Luna and led to the 2022 bear market, and is also allegedly responsible for dumping Bitcoin every day at 10 a.m., is also buying MSTR and increased allocation by 475% over the last quarter. So up to paper Bitcoin manipulation, lots of people picking up on it. Jane Street has a massive spot/futures pair trade on, and it wouldn't take a big crypto syndicate to do the funniest thing and force a squeeze on them, wiping them out overnight. Something like this is coming, guys, and indeed here you can see even further. We've got Michael Saylor talking about how he believes Bitcoin's price is being suppressed. And this just dropped yesterday with Natalie Brunell. So this is timely, to say the least. And we love serendipity, always noticing winks in the simulation. This is all happening at the same time. Here it is.
Now, there's a third place you can get credit. And the third place is you go to a crypto exchange or an OTC exchange, and they'll oftentimes give you a loan at 4%. or 3% or 5% or 2%. I've had people offer me Bitcoin back credit at 1% or 0%. What's the catch, Natalie?
Right. That's the question.
There's always the catch is they want me to transfer the Bitcoin to them so they can rehypothecate it.
Right.
So if you have $10 million, you either cannot get a loan from a legitimate bank, or you can get a small loan at a 10% interest rate, or you can get a 3 or 4% loan, but then it gets rehypothecated. So your $10 million of Bitcoin gets sold once, gets sold twice, gets sold 3 times. You might actually create $30 or $40 million worth of selling because the Bitcoin that you posted that you transferred to the shadow bank or the crypto exchange rehypothecated it 3 times. Okay, so what's holding down the price? I think what holds down the price of the asset is the lack of a fully formed non-rehypothecating credit system, right? And there's a limit to how much you can rehypothecate certain other assets, right? When you post your home as collateral for a mortgage, the bank doesn't turn around and sell the house on your street 10 times. If they did, the price of houses on your street would be lower, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that the lack of a fully formed banking system holds the price back. The existence of rehypothecation in the crypto economy damps the vol. It works to both sides, right? When people want to get short, they might get short 50x leverage. When they want to get long, they might get long 50x leverage. So right now we're in that bear market where you've got the rehypothecation holding back the price. And I think at some point it reverses itself. We'll just have to wait.
And so what I heard from that was because we haven't completely built this architecture, because we haven't completely built the alternative system, because it's still a few pieces and it's getting put together, and I think will come into clear view as we move into the next cycle in the market. Go back to exactly when he said the type of leverage you're using. That's what SBF did. SBF created a 101. He did the Price is Right trick on Arthur Hayes in order to scam him after he got Bill Barr to go and rob him and throw him in jail. You ended up getting the 101x leverage, right? BitMEX famous for 100x leverage. They went $1 more and did the Price is Right trick and went 101. And so from then on, SBF was on a crash course to subvert the alternative system we're building, which is why everyone went on a kind of kamikaze run back in 22 to stop him when it was time. That's why you had Binance expose itself the way it did. It's why you had Arthur respawning early enough that summer in order to move against him. So you've got these opportunities, and exactly as BitPain says here, you really thought Larry Fink was going to run it straight to 700,000 US trash tokens without shaking you out first. So this is what I've been saying was the case for a long time, but that's what I mean about this corruption going all the way to the Federal Reserve. That's why the manipulation of the Federal Reserve has to be taken into account before we start calculating when and where arrests, when and where Bitcoin goes up. When we start seeing the new architecture become apparent, when it comes out of this proto state, this nascent state that we have it in, and it is actually able to support our new society, the society that's being built on a Bitcoin standard, you're going to need all of this stuff built. So here you can see from the Federal Reserve just how blatantly they continue to manipulate, right? According to our price data, the US CPI is now at 1.07, below the Fed's 2% target. Daniel Lacal says US disinflation is evident. The Fed keeps hurting the job market by keeping rates above the neutral level, which hurts SMEs, the largest job creators, the most. Now, when you see what's coming next about small, medium-sized businesses, the largest job creators, they're an important facet of the new Trumpian system, otherwise known as the Hamiltonian system, the reinvigoration of the Hamiltonian system. You need these types of players, and you need them to be functional and in the game in order to move forward. And I'll show you in a few minutes that is coming. But here is Susan Kokinda talking about these foreign interests when it comes to the tariffs. And here she talks about the Hamiltonian system.
Anything but construction and economic growth, which
through endless conferences with wishful
This was the
resolutions.
Board of Peace,
The
new
world has
architecture.
never seen a move like this. It is absolutely unprecedented because, in essence, peace through construction is a very innovative concept.
Why you're going to
peace
see a
through
bridge.
construction, not peace through managed negotiation that never resolves anything, but construction and economic growth, which is the only durable basis for peace. And here's what it looks like in practice. This is what was announced on Thursday. $7 billion already committed from Gulf and Central Asian nations. The United States pledging $10 billion, which is only 2 weeks of what a war costs, as the president put it. 100,000 homes in Rafah as a starting point. A Palestinian police force with 2,000 applicants on its first day of recruiting. This isn't some hollow framework. This is an up and running operation. But perhaps the most powerful voice in that room came from the youngest head of state present, the president of Paraguay.
I think that of the many things that you have achieved in the last 12 months as president of the U.S., I think the greatest thing, and I'm probably the youngest head of state here, is hope, President. We have lost hope about solving problems for many, many decades. A system that was broken, a system that was not able to bring solutions. Now we're seeing that thanks from your leadership, we are solving the issues.
A broken system that couldn't produce solutions. He's describing exactly what Kissinger built and what the Chamber of Commerce and the Cato Institute went to court to protect. A globalist system that manages the world through war and free trade. The Board of Peace is built on the opposite premise, that human beings, given security and economic opportunity, will recognize each other as creators and builders rather than enemies. 60 nations answered that call on Thursday, because for the first time in decades, someone offered them something the empire never would, an exit from the system that was destroying them. Now, what transpired in that room on Thursday is something that every American needs to understand, that the enemy is not another person or a religion or a country, it is a system. But if you think that system is going to sit back and let the president dismantle their economic and strategic power without a fight, you don't understand how evil they are. And here's where the midterms come in. The Cook Political Report just dropped an important analysis about the mood of many voters. They reported that voters aren't just angry about the cost of living, but feel that, quote, the country's entire economic system is designed for elites at the expense of an American dream that feels increasingly out of reach. They're not wrong. And Marco Rubio told you at Munich that it was a deliberate decision. And we've shown you that it was announced 50 years ago by the Council on Foreign Relations. But if you don't understand who did it, the empire will use that anger and misdirect it, just like they have used the real anger in the Mideast to keep people fighting each other while they maintain control. Here at home, you're supposed to get angry at Trump's billionaires. That's the new Democratic Party playbook. Or whatever the latest social media outrage is. The intended outcome is simple. Enough people who voted for Trump in 2024, especially the younger ones, get demoralized, stay home in November, and the American system revolution ends in January of 2027. Don't let them do that. Think about the factory owner in Georgia who went from a few days of work a week in 2010 to turning away business today, and all the workers he's brought back to work. Think about the president of Paraguay saying that for decades there was no hope and that Trump is changing that. Think about a Treasury secretary who declared that Alexander Hamilton's system is the foundation of American sovereignty. That's why Promethean action exists. We know the playbook and we know how to defeat it. So join us.
I wanted to get the actual Hamiltonian quote here from Besant, who's in this video, but there it is.
From a nation and its people, leaving an economic wasteland and shattered lives behind. But what was the fundamental truth that past administrations had abandoned? Here's what Secretary Bessent said.
From the earliest days of the Republic, our founding fathers understood that independence required economic security. The ability to produce essential goods, sustain public credit, and foster domestic industry was seen as the foundation of sovereignty by Alexander Hamilton. And it still is.
Did you catch that?
And indeed, when he says public credit, that's why the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve is needed. If they're going to be issuing new forms of bonds, and I do believe a bit bond is coming this year, because the only way to keep interest in U.S. public debt up with low interest rates, right? They've got to lower the interest rates on the Federal Reserve note, on the greenback, on the U.S. dollar, on the USDT. They're going to keep the interest on that very low. The way to keep interest up, people interested in U.S. public debt, is to put a Bitcoin in the actual auction. So it's a 0% coupon. You buy U.S. debt, 99% of it you get back as U.S. dollars. You got to eat the inflation, but the speculative yield comes from putting Bitcoin in the pot and you get the Bitcoin back. It's a forced savings measure. And if America is holding the Bitcoin, then you'll have a higher likelihood of other people buying it. It takes the risk away. And that's why this Hamiltonian system is so important to understand. It's important to understand the public aspect of public debt and why people interested in supporting the U.S. government, the Hamiltonian version of the U.S. government, the productive version of the U.S. government, is so important. So that's why Trump coming back even more powerful. You're going to hear him tonight at the State of the Union talk about his tariff powers. You're going to hear about the Hamiltonian architecture continue to get rolled out in America. Here's Prof. St. Onge talking more about the powers of the president and trade and how you can see the architecture reorienting now before our eyes. Oh, no audio. I don't know why it randomly goes away. I just can't explain that. So 1 second, I will put it up again and you'll be getting the audio clearly.
The Supreme Court just struck down Trump's tariffs. It took him about 3 hours to start rebuilding them using other longstanding laws. Still, the decision could send hundreds of billions in refunds to foreigners. We don't know, since the Supremes offered zero guidance on refunds. So last week, the Supreme Court ruled Trump cannot impose tariffs under the law he had been using called IEEPA. Before they pop the bubbly and champagne, there are 4 other laws Trump can use to replace them, which he immediately started doing. Now, the decision was 6-3, including the 3 liberals because they hate Trump, along with Rhino Roberts and Trump appointees Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. The final 3, Thomas Alito and Kavanaugh, all supported Trump. The background is Trump's been using a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA. It was passed to replace the 1917 Trading with the Enemies Act that gave presidents near total control over the entire economy. In fact, FDR used it to infamously seize all of Americans' gold. IEEPA reins that into just international trade, authorizing presidents to, quote, regulate or prohibit trade, including pretty much anything. Quotas, embargoes, sanctions, licensing, trade freezes. However, it does not mention tariffs. So according to 6 justices, Trump can do anything with trade except tax it. Justice Kavanaugh called this, quote, nonsensical, writing, quote, if quotas and embargoes are a means to regulate trade, how are tariffs not? So if Trump cannot tax trade, who can? Congress, who, of course, will do nothing because it takes 60 votes to clear the filibuster and Republicans only have 53. The key here is Trump's got 4 other laws he can use. These are called by their sections. So there's Section 301, which allows tariffs for unfair trade practices. There's 122 for trade imbalances, 232 for national security, and 338 from the famous Smoot-Hawley law, which can impose tariffs for simply discriminating against U.S. commerce. So pretty much every trade partner does unfair trade and discrimination. Most have trade imbalances, including China, India, Japan, Europe, Mexico, and Canada. And national security has long been stretched to hilarity to illustrate it is currently being used against upholstered furniture and kitchen vanities, which are clearly national security emergencies. These laws are all long-standing with nary a peep from the Supremes. Moreover, the Supremes just affirmed that Trump can hobble trade any way he likes, from embargoes on specific countries or specific products to licenses with a fee which looks an awful lot like a tariff. He could say, tell China they can't sell any toys or clothes or anything at all until they stop smuggling fentanyl to LA, selling drones to Russia, or start buying soybeans. So it's next brought to you by I Trust Capital. The Supremes did.
So there you go. And the reason I'm bringing this up in this context is because without a sufficient global architecture in place, without a sufficient denomination of the president's powers, economic powers, then it's going to be very hard to move against the entire system at once. And they're going to have to move. There's no doubt about it, because if you look at what's happening in the world, you can tell right away that movements are being made. I mean, this is some of the most troubling news I've seen in a long time. Yesterday, if you were following what's going on between Hungary, right? Hungary was complaining to the EU about Ukraine cutting off their Russian energy that goes through Ukraine, and saying more or less that if they if Ukraine doesn't continue to give energy to Hungary because they're dependent on it, then there's going to be a big problem. So here it turns out that bang, the Ukrainians have actually already sabotaged the energy system. What a day. Lucas Ekweme says here, he says the Druzhba 1 station and at Kalekino, the key node of the Druzhba oil pipeline was blown up by Ukraine. This is after they blew up Nord Stream, we found out for sure last week. It accounts for 86% of Hungary's oil consumption and 100% of Slovakia's oil consumption. As a response, Slovakia announced it will halt electricity supplies to Ukraine. Things are heating up indeed. On the same day, you've got rumors from Mario Nawfal here. Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service is claiming that France and Britain are actively working to supply Ukraine with a nuclear or dirty bomb, including a possible covert transfer of French TN-75 warhead. Russia says the plan is designed to make any nuclear capability look like it was developed by Ukraine itself. The claim is not verified, but the stock up, this is not a drill vibes are real. So now you can see why they're playing with energy systems, people's lives, nuclear bombs. But the good news is America has the cards. If you get energy wrong, almost nothing else matters. Years ago, Europeans were not paying dramatically more for their energy than Americans, but by making energy more expensive and unreliable, it's led to a deindustrialization. And here we see from Spectator, Europe is addicted to American energy, and this all coming from Chris Wright, the Secretary of Energy. There's some good news. Here's the French government-owned energy company Engie is considering installing Bitcoin miners at its new solar plant in Brazil to make the facility more profitable. Of course, we know all about load balancing. They said BTC mining would monetize its wasted energy and would not be a short-term solution. No, indeed, we know about this stuff. Now, this is why it's important to talk about energy and infrastructure and building new financial systems. Again, it is about swapping out the old system. An analogy that I use a lot these days is that we're more or less, and I think it's prescient because, again, we're going to have a 9/11 redux over the next few months. We're going to be reevaluating everything we know about 9/11. Trump has been keeping that powder dry deliberately, I believe, in order to get people interested and to clamor for information, pure kayfabe Trump theater wrestling stuff. And so you're going to see lots of calls for it. Lots of people are going to be interested. So I like that analogy because basically basically you've got one of those World Trade Centers burning, and we're all in it. And that's the old system, and it is completely on fire. They did it to themselves, right? They lit this damn thing on fire, and we're stuck in it. And there's people jumping out. It's just as horrendous as we always saw. And so, but next to it, next to the burning World Trade Center, is one of those Elon Musk starships waiting to take off. And so we've got to jump out of that building that's burning and catch a starship. It's not easy. That's why you need the starship. You can't just jump out of the building. You need another system there. You need something else in place. You need, just as we heard from Bessent, you need global trade. You need productive economies. You need credible public debt, not the crazy public debt that we have that just spreads mental illness and lets disgusting, unhealthy people be in charge of your health, and disgusting poor people be in charge of universities, and disgusting all kinds of people doing the opposite of what they're actually good at because mental illness reigns as the operating system. It's why you're going to see the whole aspect of the Epstein files that is getting stretched thin and turning into Russia is what we'll see tonight at the State of the Union. Here is Ro Khanna saying today, okay, the UK arrested Lord Mendelsohn for his alleged ties to Epstein. But here in the United States of America, nothing. Tomorrow, I'm bringing Haley Robson, a heroic survivor, to the State of the Union. And Michael Tracy points out, Haley Robson, the heroic survivor who bragged as an adult that she was the Heidi Fleiss of Palm Beach, because she found so many girls to bring to Jeffrey and told them to lie about their ages, if not 18, so she could collect 200 US trash tokens each. Affidavit was issued for her arrest indeed. So they're going to continue to play these scamming games, this fake victim stuff. Where's the arrest? Why isn't this happening? They're going to continue to play all of this stuff. But remember, you need the other message you're going to hear tonight from Trump at the State of the Union, which is all about energy creation. It's all about the will to create this new world. It's all about what this new world will look like and what this architecture is going to be. It's energy, it's money, it's communications, it's jobs, it's education. And you can see that, what's going on. And the reason why I predict that we can't lose basically is because there's such a desire to see this world continue and not fall prey to all of the pessimism and all of the nihilism that's going on and all of the demoralization campaigns that are going on. The only thing I believe that can stop the golden age from coming at this point is these demoralization campaigns. Why isn't things going faster? Why don't we have this? But you're already seeing the will to build a new world spread like wildfire. Trump showed everyone. And as I said yesterday, when Trump came back in 2024 and he won the election, that was everyone's comeback. It wasn't just Trump's comeback. It was everyone who was persecuted for January 6th. It was everyone who said the 2020 election was a scam. Russia was a scam. People like me who said that SBF and everything like that was market manipulation from the very beginning, from the highest sources, from the worst possible people. And you had to keep all of these thoughts sort of at the level that you could only share them within the P2P Bitcoin environment. We can only test them with each other for feedback. Too many people just sprung into cognitive dissonance whenever you brought this stuff up. But this whole piece has lost containment now. Even when you see Ro Khanna here, who, you try to give this guy credit. I spoke with him in Nashville. You try to see him as a Bitcoiner, but he keeps playing. It looks like he's going into the designated liar category of Democrats, that there's only a few people they can get to go up and straight up lie. Adam Schiff's and all these folks. It looks like he's vying to be one of these guys now. So be very careful about Ro Khanna in general going forward. It looks like he's happy to be a designated liar and will lie just about anything. But just look at how Trump and his modeling of all of this stuff has really inspired people around the world. Look what's going on in the UK. Here you see this conversation between Yarvin and McCormick talking about the will it takes. And this is why, again, I believe that the Middle East is such a good ally. They just had their generation that grew and they've lived optimistically for most of their lives. And there's many populations around the world like that. My home of Quebec, I'll talk about Quebec in a few minutes, is like that. Quebec only woke up from whatever proto-feudal society they were in. They sort of missed out on a lot of the architecture of deceit getting put up in the first place. They weren't really a country. They were a subjugated colony from a generation earlier, from a cycle earlier. So they were kind of forgotten in a lot of ways. And when they came about in the 1950s and 60s and started to really live as a modern type of golden age society, they don't want it to stop. They're not part of the Anglo-Saxon trend of fourth turnings. They're on their own fourth turning. Remember, the fourth turning applies to English and American societies. The French Canada was on a completely different cycle, just like the Middle East is on a different cycle, just like Asia is on a different cycle. Can you tell me that the Singaporeans or the Indians or the Chinese, for that matter, are ready to just give up because the British system is on its last legs? Of course not. There was a will to move forward. We saw that during COVID. One of the most optimistic pieces of the way the COVID response to me went was that you indeed did see people say, no, we're not going down. We're not going to let civilization end. We're going to find a way to go forward. It's people like Elon Musk. It's people like Trump himself, right? You need the separate architecture to be functioning before you completely destroy the old one. And here, having the will to do these things is very important, as you'll hear Curtis Yarvin and McCormick discuss.
Going back to the Farage.
Farage.
Yeah, well, that's what Dominic found with Boris. Basically, Dom wanted to he wasn't, I don't know, he's a little wonky, whatever, but he wanted to actually do things with the UK government. And they get into number 10 and he realizes that Boris, for all his, legendary brain power, just wants to sit in number 10 and look good, like any other occupant of number 10, basically, for really quite some time. And, his goal is just to stay on the horse, which is one of the great metaphors from Carlyle from 170 years ago, right? And he's not riding the horse in any direction. The horse will go in whatever direction it goes. He just wants to stay on the horse. And in Carlyle's metaphor, the horse is following its own footsteps in a circle, right? And whereas, so maybe Farage, maybe Nigel wants to rule. It's hard to know. Rupert wants to rule.
So I'm going to disagree with you. So firstly, I'm going to say, I think Farage built a lot of political capital by being Farage.
Yes.
And
But does he want to spend it on being Nigel?
I don't think he does. I think he thinks he cannot win as Nigel. And I think that's going to be potentially his mistake. To be seen, there's a lot that Rupert has to do. I think the great thing about Rupert is he doesn't want to be Prime Minister. He feels he has a duty.
Yes.
He's like that. Who's the Greek? Canisia? I can't remember his name.
Cincinnatus. That's Roman, not Greek.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm stealing that. That was Connor Tomlinson told me that. But I think he feels a duty to do it, which is why he doesn't change character. I think he would go in, he would do it for as short a time as possible and leave. He has no want for anything. He wants to be on his farm.
Going back to the
And that's exactly it. Just like when you don't get to choose if you go to war. I try to tell NPC Canadians that all the time about the future of their country. And they're like, well, we're not going to vote to join the United States. And I say to them, you think you get a choice in war? You think you just but we didn't vote for war. But excuse me, invaders. We actually had a referendum here and we decided we didn't want you here, invaders. Excuse me, Mr. Mongol horde. Excuse me, Attila the Hun. We had a referendum, thank you, and we said no to the roving hordes. It's not how it works, okay? War comes to you. You don't get to choose it. It's never been that way in the history of war. You have no choice if war is prosecuted on you or not. You don't get a choice. The best you can do is arm yourself economically, arm yourself through trade, disincentivize the war. Just as we see Calcasa say here, or the Africans, they have a will to continue. They're not on the Anglo-American cycle. They've benefited tremendously from the economic innovations, the boons that came from technology, the internet, aerospace, microprocessing. They don't want to let all that go today. They're just awakening as societies. They're just reaching a certain maturity level. They don't want to have some form of adolescence, a premature end. Of course not, right? And there is a will to live, and you're seeing with all of this stuff going on in the UK right now with the awful stories. I mean, the rape gang stuff is just it's worse than Epstein in as far as its grotesquerie goes. As far as I can tell, at least what's proven, there's a lot of stuff in Epstein files that is satanic and stuff, but I mean, it's not explicit like we know what we're seeing now. If it's all true in Epstein, it's as bad as it could ever get, I think. But the stuff we're seeing, just straight up facts in the UK stories with Keir Starmer, are some of the worst things I've ever read in my life. It's actual sexual slavery and pedal bikers everywhere, and families that are pedal bikers, and cousins. Imagine you had a cousin. You call your cousin up to do that kind of stuff. Look, it's sick. And so you see here, and Christian Hyen says, this is why it's so important that the right unites around Rupert Lowe. Rupert wants to wield power to save his country, and that's all a man could ever hope for. A leader who understands what time it is, what must be done, and that no one else can do it for him. For quite a while, Brits on the right looked to America with envy because we had Trump and they were stuck with Boris and his millions of foreign imports. But for the first time in quite a while, I think Americans on the right could look to the UK with envy because there's a real political movement that desires power, knows what it intends to do with it, and has a leader who wants to wield it. This is the only way to escape the populism trap and bring about a true Pareto-style circulation of the elites. You need a counter-elite that will step up and righteously wield power for the sake of the nation, rather than the meekly asked to just be left alone. We are witnessing the beginning of that counter-elite form. It's not just the elite, it's also infrastructure. It's a new system that has to be in place in order to catch the falling system, catch the people that are caught up in the falling system, and be able to move forward. You can see Bukele say exactly the same thing. It's all about will. Here is Bukele just the other day talking about this. The only way to solve any existing problem with security, well, I won't play it in that voice here. Must watch El Salvador's Bukele explains the problem Mexico and other countries face. Every state is stronger than the criminal groups on its territory, but if a state cannot overcome them, it is because it is complicit in the crime. Once the state stops being complicit in crime and fights the criminals with force, it overcomes it. It's about will. I got to pause this for 1 second because the fucking kites are out today. I have a million goddamn... Can you hear them? I don't think you can hear them. I got kites blowing up there. I fucking hate them. Just give me a second. I got to close my door. It's distracting me. If you ever, sometimes people ask me what because I always speak so well of Barbados, and I always will. I love Barbados. People say, well, what's one bad thing there? It's the kites. People fly fucking kites with these stupid goddamn noisemakers on them, and they'll let them go for 2 or 3 fucking days all night long, and it sounds like a goddamn weed whacker. It's the loud... As you guys know, I'm all about small government. I'm a 100% Bitcoin standard type of person. I want the constitutionally prescribed government for America. I want nothing like a police state, nothing like any of these things. But when you get me on weed whackers and kites, I am 100% fascist. I don't give a fuck. I don't care. Get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Go, whatever powers you want, I'll vote for that. I don't care. Noise is, I can't handle it. I cannot handle it. We hate it. Better than, oh no, Noodles, Return of the Kites, T-Dog Yo-Yo. Yes. Nolan is getting, there's no guns here. I would have a rifle. I did not bring a drone either. I keep forgetting. Better than slurping noodles. Slurping noodles is bad, okay? Slurping noodles. When I lived in South Korea, I would go into if anyone ever brought me to a noodle shop, I would have to go in there's sometimes private rooms with the doors. I would go and eat there. You know how many times I would tell straight up, like, stop slurping to Korean people? And a visitor in Kite Arant. Yeah, we hate the kites. This is how he reinforces his sludge people theory. So there, yeah, again, go back to the will. Here you hear, just like we heard from Rupert Lowe, and the will to lead and the will to build and the Hamiltonian system. You hear from Bukele on the Mexican story, the will to lead and the will to knock down these criminal enterprises. Just a second, I got a chart. I plug my computer into. There we go. So indeed, Bukele talking about the will to lead and complicit in crime. And a lot of this is applicable because this is exactly what it looks like is happening in Mexico, of course. Here's Glenn Beck, who covered it yesterday. A year ago, Brandon Darby told me the only way Mexico could prove it's serious about fighting the cartels is by taking out El Mencho. That's how game-changing Sunday's operation was. Brandon tells me it would never have happened without President Trump's pressure campaign. In an effort to appease us, Mexico was actually still helping El Mencho. They were protecting him and taking out his adversaries as proof that they were serious about cartels. What happened was that Mexico realized that you're either going to do this or the U.S. is going to do this alone, and the political fallout will be horrible for you if the U.S. takes unilateral military action in your country. And they decided to play ball, roll the dice, and go for it. So you're seeing exactly what I mean by will, the will to do these things, the will to build this new system. And here's a little detail that I didn't know, but probably true. It looks like the El Mencho death instead of trial was deliberate, because they've arrested him before, but he gets out right away. So here, journalist Carlos Sarakoff revealed that the U.S. led the capture of El Mencho, but Sheinbaum decided to assassinate him during his transfer so that he would not expose the links with the Mexican drug government and the financing of Morena. Again, what you hear there is architecture. This is infrastructure. This is exactly what you're hearing from the Epstein files. You're hearing about financial flows, incentives, messaging, consequences. You're hearing about a system. And that's why we have to focus on this system piece. The system piece is important to understand this. And now when you even go deeper into what's going on in Mexico, this is an interesting fact, and it applies to and it's how I'll relate what's going on in Mexico to Canada and the United States and England and other places. Because here, Matt Forney points out something I think is important. Now, I am absolutely no expert on Latin America. Like, I'm pretty ignorant, actually, about Latin America. It's not my specialty in this world. I don't know much. I know a lot more about the Far East, the Middle East, Europe, America. Not at all an expert on what's going on in Latin America. I've been many times. I have some ideas. I have some thoughts. Like I said yesterday, I'm no fan of visiting Mexico. So that's, I went for Satoshi Roundtable a few years ago, but we had armed guards, and I had a large insurance scheme and private protection and all those kinds of things. But here, Matt Forney talks about a little more about the political situation in Mexico, and this rings true to me. So what I do know, this applies. The problem with Mexico compared to other Latin countries, and a likely factor in why Trump hasn't struck them yet, is that they lack a right wing that can take power. So I'm mentioning this because, again, you have to understand the consequences of stuff. You have to understand if there's architecture, if there's systems in place, because we're not just attacking individual things here. We're attacking an entire system. Bitcoin is doing that as well. We're attacking an entire system. And you have to be ready for the fallout if you're successful in breaking the system. And so here, I think that's what is going into these calculations, is that they lack a right wing that can take power. For all of their hatred of the Yankee and the gringos, Mexico's political scene resembles Canada or Britain's more than it does other Latin countries. No right wingers, just the far left and conservatives. Part of this comes down to the fact that the Quadalismo is an entrenched reality of Mexican politics. Since the Mexican Revolution, Mexican presidents have been limited to a single term in office, and ultimate authority rests in the ruling party, not the president. There's no power behind the throne like in other third world countries. The one guy who tried it, Calles, got exiled out of the country at gunpoint. Lazaro Cardenas set up the PRI under this principle. A president can exert total control when he is in office, including handpicking his successor. But once he's out of office, he fucks off into his ejido and stays out of politics for the rest of his life. Up until recently, Mexican congressmen were also limited to one term in office, which further entrenched anti-quadalismo by keeping individual politicians from accumulating a power base independent of their parties. Morena is being run on this principle too. Everyone who claims Sheinbaum is AMLO's puppet is wrong. I'm sure she's consulting with them in private, but he does not exercise any real control over the party. The guy is half dead and was already sundowning Biden style when he was in office. His daily press conferences were unironically a good way to learn Spanish because he spoke in such a slow, doddering, rambling fashion. If AMLO were running things behind the scenes, Morena would not be going off the rails with this loony libtard bullshit. He was a pragmatist who restrained Morena's worst inclinations when he was in power. For example, he refused to institute COVID lockdowns or vaccine passports, and had a good working relationship with Trump. It was under AMLO that Mexico began cracking down on its southern border to stem the flow of Central and South American illegals. The other problem is that Morena isn't wrong when they point out how corrupt and useless the opposition is. PRA is a vacuum of grifters who want to rob everyone blind. PAN are, I guess these are all political parties in Mexico. PAN are ineffectual retards who couldn't organize a gangbang in a whorehouse. Who does that leave? PRD has dissolved in 2024 after they failed to meet federal requirements to get 3% of presidential vote. MC is a gay retard party of upper middle class Jalisciense, don't know what that is, Jaliscience, who hate Morena for giving their tax dollars to Oaxacans, but won't vote PAN because they're icky reactionaries, basically Mexico's equivalent of the Liberal Democrats. The other parties, PT and PVEM, are allied with Morena, and PVEM just an opportunist grifter party anyway. Where is Mexico's Bukele? They're Milei, they're Bolsonaro. I follow Mexican politics somewhat closely and can't think of a single politician who fits the bill. Eduardo Verastegui of Sound of Freedom fame tried to mount an independent campaign for the presidency in 2024, but couldn't get the required number of signatures to get on the ballot. There's also no anti-immigration element in Mexican politics. Bukele is aligned with Trump in wanting to help stem illegal immigration to the U.S. because he doesn't want his country's best and brightest to leave. In the 2024 election, Sheinbaum and her opponents, the fat tamale hawker with that PRI PAN nominated, and some other homo who nobody remembers, were competing to see who could be the biggest tick on America's back. This is a consideration that Trump has to take into account when moving against the Mexican cartels. All you idiots who oppose taking down Venezuela because you thought it would send a ton of refugees to the U.S., never mind that Maduro was the one sending illegals in the first place. Destabilizing Mexico actually would create a crisis of that magnitude. The last time Mexico fell into complete anarchy, it resulted in Pancho Villa crossing the border to kill Americans and a failed expedition led by Pershing. I opposed any sort of war with Mexico during the Biden administration for that reason. They'd fuck it up W style and allow cartels to do the American cities what they're doing to Guadalajara right now. Trump is smarter than you, which is why he's not hitting the big red button like a chimp the second the Mexicans start beating it up. A resolution to the Mexican problem will inevitably involve working with elements of Morena to keep the country from turning into Somalia. Trust the plan. Now, I don't know about all the details, but I wanted to share it with you because I wanted to let you know that it's the same as what we're talking about with Epstein and the architecture of deceit. It's the same as what we're talking about with the reinstitution of Hamiltonian economic system in America. You have to have a functioning version of the new system. You have to have an off-ramp. Again, why I've been warning you about the South Korean leader last week who crossed the Rubicon but didn't have a plan. And that's why you had people reading the Sith, have I told you the Darth Plagueis the Wise parable, replacing it all with the leader of Korea, because he was too foolish to have a plan on how to get out. You need one. This isn't really improv. We're dealing with very powerful forces that would be willing to let China, whoops, I have to redo that. I had one that I had closed by accident. Just a second. Recently closed. There we go. Now, the good news is, and this is great news, is that you're going to see all of the just like it's a race between banker extraction system versus an actually productive economic system. We're seeing the actual economy now start to reflect the same change. So on a micro level, on an individual level, just like on a state level, just like Trump is trying to reinstitute a Hamiltonian go and build a situation, we can see from the stories in Greenland, how I believe Trump is going to end up getting Greenland, economic ties, going to build. Remember, the American colonial system is very simple. Just go build. And the people who build get to reap the benefits of having built. It's not about an imperial imposition of an economic system in order to extract wealth and value. And, you know, you go and think of what's going on for peace. And again, here's the Ben Gurion Canal project. This is going to tie up the Middle East with the between Saudi Arabia and Israel. It's everything that we heard from the Abraham Accords, everything you heard from Promethean action before. This is the kind of system that is going to allow for Gaza and Palestine to actually have a fruitful, beneficial, optimistic future compared to what they've got today. And it is all from tying up the economics of this. Now, one of the best news you're going to hear, it sounds like bad news at first, but here's the official stock ticker of IBM. So this stock ticker here, I think, shows you the old world and the new world at once. This market crash yesterday has been the result of a AI breakthrough with Claude Code that will have the old IBM COBOL. Apparently, its official IBM stock just posted its worst day since October 20th, October 2000, after Anthropic announced that Claude will streamline COBOL code. Today is the day AI became dystopian for millions of people. Indeed, millions of people do that job, and now millions of people are out of a job. So again, why you need architecture in place to take over while you destroy things? Well, here's what we know from Naval. Naval had a great talk yesterday saying vibe coding is the new product management. There's been a shift, and you can hear all of Naval talking about how individual niches and how people are going to become so much more powerful as a result of all this. I'll play the audio clip in a second. It's a 50-minute podcast. Michael Tanguma, a Bitcoiner, here talking about it. So we love Michael. We've worked with Michael before. He's a great guy. And here he is discussing the Naval podcast and all this. He says, this might be the most important 45 minutes on AI I've heard to date. Naval just published a conversation that mass media will completely ignore. But if you're a founder, an investor, or anyone trying to figure out what the hell is about to happen to the economy, you need to hear what he said. I broke down the 12 largest ideas. So Naval left investing to go build again. His reason was blunt. People who only talk lose contact with reality. They stop getting feedback from markets, from physics, from nature. Their thinking goes stay. It's in the doing that you learn. And, Epstein files shows a lot of stale people. I think about this every single day. The most dangerous person in any boardroom is the one who hasn't shipped anything in years, but has a lot of opinions, indeed. Here he said something that sounds extreme until you sit with it for 5 minutes. Vibe coding is the new product management. You can now describe an entire application in plain English. AI builds it, scaffolding, libraries, test harnesses, everything, no code. Anyone with taste, structured thinking, and clear communication can go from idea to working product today, right now. This has literally never been true in the history of technology. So here, but there's a thing that nobody wants to hear. There is zero demand for average. A tsunami of new apps is about to hit. Most will be completely ignored because the best app in any category wins basically 100% of that market. Naval quoted Glenn Ross. First place gets the Cadillac. Second place gets steak knives. Third place, you're fired. The only escape is finding a niche where you can be the best, and then keep redefining what that niche until it's true. He dropped an observation that about market structure that I think is one of the most important things anyone has said about AI. The real wealth goes to the aggregator. Amazon killed bookstores. YouTube killed TV networks. AI apps will follow the exact same pattern. A few massive platforms on top, a million tiny niche apps at the bottom. The middle gets obliterated. If you're running a 5 to 20 person software company right now, you're standing directly in the kill zone. This one caught me off guard. Naval doesn't do prompt engineering, no tricks, no fancy workflows. He just talks to the computer. His reasoning AI is adapting to us faster than we can adapt to it. The tips and tricks people post online right now have a shelf life of weeks. Your ability to think clearly and say what you actually want, that compound for. Don't learn how to use AI. Let AI learn how to be useful to you. I've never heard anyone put it that simply. Every human is now a spellcaster. Remember, I wrote in Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management, it's all about spellcasting. Literally, it's about spellcasting. It's a completely different world. Programmers used to be wizards memorizing arcane commands. AI just handed a magic wand to every person on Earth. But the people who understand what's happening underneath the spells still have a massive edge. All abstractions leak. When the magic breaks, someone has to look under the hood. The best founders in the next decade will be the ones who understand the technology, even if they never write a single line of code again. No entrepreneur is worried about AI taking their job. This one is deceptively deep. Entrepreneurs don't have jobs. They have impossible problems. Any AI that shows up as an ally is an ally, not a threat. The thing AI is fundamentally missing is agency. This is what I mean about the will to win. Agency is everything. Just like Bukele said, you have to have the will. Just like you heard Curtis Yarvin and Peter McCormick discuss about the future leadership of England, it's about agency. Just like we've seen from Trump, it's about agency. Trump is going about building an alternative system because that's what you need to do if you want to actually destroy the old system. Breaking is easy. Having an alternative system there in order to catch the fallout of what you broke is much harder, but he's well on his way to doing it. Naval said the key thing that separates entrepreneurs from everyone else in the economy is extreme agency. Operating in the making decisions nobody else will make. That is a moat, not agency. This is the part that should genuinely scare people who aren't paying attention. Intelligence and leverage are not normally distributed. The outcomes will be super abnormal. A great programmer with AI doesn't get 10x more productive. They get 1000x. They don't write code better. They rewrite entire industries. Naval said every other job is going to get eaten by programmers one way or the other over the long term. I've been thinking about that sentence for 2 days straight. But here's the thing that balances out and why this is why I'm optimistic. The alpha will always be human. Naval's thought experiment: imagine every guy on a date with an AI earpiece whispering what to say, a true Cyrano de Bergerac. Then every woman gets one telling her to ignore the AI-generated lines. Trading bots cancel each other out. AI writing competes against AI writing. When the tools are equal, the only remaining edge is human creativity, taste, and judgment. Those can't be automated, period. He the most patient tutor that you can meet at exact judgment, and I've been saying that for a long time. Naval disagrees with Steve Jobs on creativity, and I think he's right. Jobs said creativity, just putting things together. Naval says it's wrong. Real creativity is producing the answer that was not predictable or foreseeable from the question. So far out of bounds that a computer searching randomly would never arrive at it in a million years. That's synthetic knowledge that is brand new, and I do believe he is right to disagree with with him on that. Now, just look, this is what's going on, just to show you the power, right? This is a funny story that people are talking about today. Man, and this will show everything at once, right? So think of the AI story with IBM and what that meant to IBM stock. And I'll relate it to another big company in a second. Man accidentally gains control of 7,000 robot vacuums. Sammy Asduful just wanted his DJI Romo with a gaming controller. So that's what he did. And so he had just literally an Xbox controller, right? So here's the details. And it's a pretty funny story. So the story is actually insane. Dude drops 2,000 US trash tokens on a DJI robot vacuum like a lunatic. Refuses to use the normal app like a peasant. Sammy Asduful fires up Claude to crack the API so he can drive it with an Xbox controller. Claude delivers the goods, pulls an authentication token from the servers, connects successfully, except the system thinks he controls 7,000 vacuums. Checks again. Yep, 7,000. DJI built authentication with zero device ownership verification. Any valid token works for any unit on the planet. Sammy now has eyes inside homes across 24 countries. Live vacuum camera feeds everywhere. Full floor plans from the mapping data. Some guy in Germany eating cereal at 3 a.m. unaware his Roomba is snitching. One API call away from being the most informed burglar in history. All he wanted was to steer his vacuum with a joystick, does the right thing and reports it. DJI fixes it within 2 days, back to normal life with his stupidly expensive floor cleaner. IoT companies stay undefeated at shipping garbage security. So here's just simulation wink. Like all of this happened with an Xbox controller. This is one guy who used an Xbox tool to take over another company. And yesterday, we found out that Xbox is dead. It's finished. Under the new CEO, original Xbox co-founder and console designer Seamus Blackley says here, and indeed, I fucking knew it. Every company will be cannibalized by AI to avoid the bursting bubble. So even they're going to go here and say that they want customers to do enabling AI to drive things, right? That's at odds with auteur art of any model, but specifically games. So what's funny is that this is just one of those stories. A whole system breaking, Xbox breaking, the company Microsoft canceling it. Apparently the CEO is super woke and stupid. Nobody likes her. And now we also see someone leveraging our technology, using AI to take control of a Roomba robot vacuum army. And just like we heard from Naval, just like we saw with IBM, things are changing so fast. But again, you have to be building the system that will take care of the future that is going to get to that point. And that's why here, this is a famous quote of ours, right? It's been around. I've read it on this show before. But here, bow tie. Life is electric. Still think about around like God, I'm in history. Life is fucking electric, bro. Don't fall for the doomer shit. That's for losers and normies scared of their own shadows. Walk around like God sent you and smile at everyone you see. Spread light and abundance, build things and take chances. This is the best time in history. And I believe that. I believe it really is. And you're going to see more and more examples of this. You're going to see more and more people understand this. You're going to see more and more people building. And again, go back to the whole immigration debate. All of this automation, all of these robots, all of this AI takes away the main argument for immigration in the first place to countries like Canada and the United States and France and the UK and Germany. And when you take away that argument for immigration, things start to change very quickly. And now already we're seeing people rely on these very arguments here in Denmark. The increasing cost of housing in Denmark since 1999 has been caused 88% by mass immigration. It wasn't for mass immigration, you would be able to purchase housing and pay rent essentially at 1999 price raw egg national. This is one of the best ways to present as a means of improving day-to-day life. Tell them the vision of a multicultural society they were sold was a lie that was that has immiserated them, and give them the facts. It's true. And indeed, that's why the argument is going to be persuasive. But again, you need to be able to build all these things simultaneous. You need the technology and the ability to underline this better quality of life. But it's happening. I mean, here's my home province of Quebec. Small news here, a little corner of Quebec yesterday had a by-election. Chicoutimi, I would say the demographics have changed the least of any place in Canada, I would argue. I'm not sure if that's exactly true. I don't have the stats in front of me. But what I do know about this part of Quebec is that it's always been, we say in Quebec, pure laine, which means pure white wool. That's what Quebecers describe these areas as, right? If you're a Quebecer from your 18 or 19 generations and came over, you're called in Quebec a pure laine, a pure wool Quebecer. And the area of Chicoutimi and the Saguenay is, that's why we have a Saguenay Sank here, regular in the comment section. I think he commented earlier today, even Saguenay 55 from the Saguenay region, Chicoutimi being the main city there. I spent 2 weeks there as a little kid, actually, learning French. I did a student exchange up there, and I have nothing but incredibly fond memories of that part of Quebec. Very different than the rest of Quebec, very extremely different than the rest of Quebec. Their other nickname is the Bleuet, because they have so many blueberries just grow everywhere there in the summertime. Not an extremely fertile place, so blueberries are perfect for the rocky Canadian shield which they have around them. So yesterday, the Separatist Party won in a landslide by-election, and coming in second, it should be noted, is the Conservative Party of Quebec, a brand new party. Here you can see between them, they had way more votes. This is the current ruling party, got 625 votes. The Liberals barely clocking, nowhere on the board. No Quebec Solidaire either. It looks like they've all been blown out, and the Parti Québécois won in a romp. Jason Leving saying 2026 may be the last year Canada will be the Canada we grew up in. October 5th, provincial election, Parti Québécois running on the promise to hold a referendum on secession. And the number one motivating factor for this party winning yesterday is immigration. That's the only thing. That's what made the Parti Québécois so ascendant in the polls. They've been telling Canada for years, get rid of them. We don't want it. They have shared immigration control in Quebec. And so here you can see Quebec winning this by-election. Now compare it, right, just as headed, you can see that's what's going on. Those two referendums are happening. Yesterday, the Premier of Ontario crying about immigration. I've always said, and I've never changed my mind when it comes to immigration. We need skilled immigration. We need economic immigration. And White Papers Policy Institute says Ontario isn't getting economic. So this fucking loser is going to go and campaign against Trump now in the mid. He actually is such an NPC that he gave the NPC line. The walls are, he actually said the walls are closing in on Trump yesterday. He actually said it. So not looking good for Canada. And he's doubling down on immigration. People pointing out here, net debt has exploded. Diversity is bankrupting Ontario. There is no economic immigration taking place. There's only significant change has been mass immigration. And indeed, you can see the incentives right there. And you can see why Canada is having so much trouble with what's going on and so much trouble adapting. You're going to continue to see this kind of stuff. And that is what is going on. I got Hank in the house. Let me just stop sharing for a second. And then I shall bring Hank into the room. I'll be on Hank's show after this, everyone. If you want to come check it out. Hank!
Hey, Nolan. Happy Tuesday. How are you?
I love life, my man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. It's another week. I'm excited for the State of the Union address. This is going to be a fun one.
It's going to be fun. I can't wait. I was pumping it up a little bit earlier today about what we might see. And of course, I believe Trump is going to be doubling down on his economic vision for the country and energy and Greenland and everyone getting rich. And that's my prediction. You're going to hear a lot about the economic system he's building.
Yeah, I can't wait to when he officially announces troops on the ground in Greenland in real time. Twitter is going to be a mess. I can't wait. I'm very
You
excited.
don't need troops. They're just going to be putting up nuclear reactors and Amazon delivery. Amazon delivery troops.
Oh, well, in that case, I'm fine with that. As long as Bezos is on board, it will be great. And we're going to talk a lot about that. We got, we're talking about, I'm sure you've been watching the cartel violence in Mexico. That's been crazy. We're actually going to be joined by Isabella Santos, is going to be breaking and then with us. She's kind of on the ground there. I think she's out of danger, hopefully, but we'll get more from what's actually going on. So I'm excited to talk about that. And we got the FCC wants broadcast television to be more patriotic, which I guess we can all get behind. And then the racial slur thing at BAFTA. There's a lot going on in the world today. I'm excited to break it all down with you, Nolan.
Fun, man. Fun. Well, we'll be there in a few minutes. So looking forward to it. And I'm glad I'll be on with Isabella. We love Isabella. She's great.
She's great. And I get you both this morning. So an exciting times for me. Enjoy wrapping up your show. I'll see you in a bit, Nolan.
Yeah, man. See you later,
Thanks.
Hank. All right, folks. There's Hank. I'll be on Hank's show in just a few minutes. Let me see what's going on in the comment. There we go. Barely, shout out to my fellow frogs lurking from G Money's Telegram group. Chatelet Nolan, thanks for the positivity as always. Very cool. Thank you. I follow Don Ricardo Salinas and always wonder about his role in Mexico. He seems concerned about his country and not politically active, says T-Dog. Yo, yo, yo. Yeah, I'm a big fan. I love when Nolan goes nuke status. Is shared airspace a tragedy of the commons? I like this guy. Yeah, it could be. I have a big fan of over the top retaliation against the noisy folks. Barely 45. When Trump won in 2024, I told my Mexican friend that the cartel's days were numbered and that I want to go to the World Cup game in Mexico City. Can't wait for that prediction to come to fruition. I believe that is the case. The beginning of the end. Don is losing his grip. He can't make it. He's losing his grip. He can't. It's not going to work out for him. No, indeed. Great show as per usual. Thanks. Escape the Matrix and 91. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm going to be on with Hank right after this. So I encourage you to come have a look over on the Roxham channels. We're going to have a good time over there. And I will be soon playing the Roxham logo. After the Roxham logo, you'll see the thanks for watching screen. I want to tell you, thanks for watching. Peace.